Hi guys, I'm Amy and welcome to my podcast, Spill the Teeth, where I spill the tea on all things dentistry and a bunch of other fun things. Welcome to episode 9. So this past Monday I had a practical in fixed, and I think I talked about this a little bit in the last episode. So me and my classmates had to do a crown prep on number 9 and 11 in 2 hours. And that went okay, not as well as my first practical did, but I passed and I did pretty well, so that's all that matters. In RPD, I've been working on sectioning my master cast to make an altered cast. So I had already sectioned the master cast, and all I had to do is box it up and pour up the section that is going to be the altered cast. So I did that, got that signed off, and now I'm going to move forward with fitting the framework back on the altered cast and adding on the base plate so I can mount it and then eventually add teeth to it. On Wednesday, we had a really long day, or well, it felt long to me. I had 2 quizzes that morning, and then an exam, and then endo in the afternoon, and there was a lot of rain. I think we were under a tornado warning or watch. I can't really remember, but all I remember is being in endo and hearing a lot of rain. So there was a lot of rain that Wednesday, but thankfully I was safe and dry inside doing endo. On Thursday, I had operative, and we did a practice for the practical, which is doing a composite restoration on number 28 and 29, and I tend to do better with amalgam. I just find it easier to work with. I can carve it. There's not much flash or excess that I have to try and get off. But with composite, it's been a little bit more difficult. I showed it to my professor after because we self-evaluate it, and then a professor has to evaluate it as well, and we see how our grades or how we both evaluate it and how close that is to each other. But I told him I'm better at amalgam than composite, and he's like, yeah, you are. So that was pretty funny. I really didn't need him to confirm that for me. That was just me speaking my thoughts out loud, but yeah, I'm better at amalgam than composite, so I've been working on that. We'll be continuing to work on that before the practical for that, which is this coming Thursday. Thursday afternoon, I had a perio skills assessment, so it's not technically a practical, but we were being tested on the different instruments in perio and how to use them and how to position them and what they're used for. So that went pretty well. I got points taken off because I wasn't using a proper finger rest at some times and wasn't using my mirror, which I thought was a little odd because there are some instances where I didn't really need a mirror, but they definitely want you to be using a mirror, and obviously you need to have appropriate finger rest while you're using the instruments. But yeah, the professor was like, you need to use your finger rest and your mirror, so I will definitely keep that in mind when I'm moving forward and doing it in actual patients. So now that I've gone over what I did this past week, it's time for the hot and not of the week. So again, we start out with the not because I believe in hearing the bad news first. So the not for this week was the rain. And so I talked about on endo on Wednesday we had a bunch of rain, but it has been continuing to rain, and where I live, me and my roommate, we get water in the basement, which I'm used to. I grew up in 2 different houses that both had issues with water in the basement, so I'm used to that. I have a shot vac, and we have a dehumidifier down there, but it's not something I enjoy. I don't personally like the rain, and especially it coming into the basement is also not a fun thing. So yeah, that was definitely the not of this week. The hot of this week was just getting done with all the exams and practicals, at least for this week, or this past week. So again, I talked about the fixed practical, quizzes on Wednesday, then an exam on Wednesday, the practice for the practical on operative on Thursday, and then the perio skills assessment. So just getting all that out of the way was really nice. Although this coming week I do have an exam on Wednesday again in radio, and then I have the operative practical. So no rest for the weary as in my case, but it is to be expected going towards the end of the semester. Everything is kind of ramping up again. Things get stressful, as it were. So I guess this is a good time to transition into my kind of dental related topic, but also not related to dentistry topic, but I want to talk about how to cope with stress. And it's not me giving you advice on how to cope with stress because people are very different, but just what are ways that we, as dental students, as STEM majors, as medical students, as anybody, can cope with stress. So actually, I did a question version of this on my Instagram story, and I got some responses, and some of the people were making jokes, and I know these people, so it was kind of funny to read their responses, but some more serious or actual responses that one person said that they go into their room to meditate or to draw. Some people read books in their free time. The less serious answers were go and find a corner and cry and dissociate, which are all things that, you can do and definitely might help you cope with stress. But yes, those were some funny responses from people I know. And I've been thinking about this a lot as dental school comes along. What are good ways to cope with stress? Because it feels like every single day is a stressful day. There's things due, I have to study for things, quizzes, exams, practicals. So we really have to find a good way to cope with stress. So for me, I feel like if I'm stressed about school, I tend to do more schoolwork, which is kind of counterintuitive because it just is a vicious cycle of becoming more stressful. But nevertheless, I force myself to think about things that I do that are not school related that help me cope with stress from school. So I talked about some of this stuff in my episode where I talked about what I do in my free time. But I do play piano when I'm stressed, and if you listened to that episode or watched it, you know that I have an electric piano where I live, so I play that when I'm stressed. I haven't actually been playing it recently. It's not that I don't have time, because I try to make time during the end of the day to just not do schoolwork. It's just that I haven't had things that I've wanted to play yet, so I haven't really been playing piano at all. Another thing that I do if I'm stressed is that I write. Any writer knows that stressful things in your life make good fodder for writing, so sometimes things that I'm going through pop up in my stories, but it also is just a way to just get things out on paper, and sometimes your characters are going through the same things that you are going through, and that helps you cope with stress easier. But yes, I do write if I'm stressed. Another thing that I do if I'm stressed is go on a walk. And I am not somebody who is claiming to be an exercise fanatic. I don't really like to exercise. I don't think people were made to run. And if you're running, then it's because your life should depend on it. And I tell people that if you see me running, then you should be running too, because I'm only going to run if my life depends on it. But I do like taking walks. So I usually drive somewhere. There's a park about like 15 minutes away from where I live. So I usually drive there and walk, and I just listen to music or I think about my story. I've actually come up with some good dialogue and some good story plots on my walks, so I like to do that if I'm stressed. Now, mind you, I'm only going to do this if it's a nice day outside. If it's like sunny and warm, I'm not going to go out when it's cold. I'm not going to go out when it's raining. Don't like the rain, don't like the cold. So if I am stressed and I want to go on a walk, it's going to be saved for a day where it's going to be sunny and warm. So those are some of the healthy ways that I cope with stress. And I'm not perfect. I do have some unhealthy coping methods, one of which is doing more schoolwork. I don't think that's personally for me, who does schoolwork a lot. If you see my timetable, because I like to keep track of the time I study, if you see the amount of time I study a lot. And I don't think, personally for me, that's a great thing if I'm stressed to do more studying, because, again, like I talked about, it's a vicious cycle of just becoming more stressed about the thing that's stressing you. So, yes. I don't personally recommend doing more schoolwork to cope with stress. That's definitely not what I'm encouraging. Another unhealthy coping method of stress that I used to have and still kind of do sometimes is eating. So I would eat more if I was stressed, and that's kind of been remedied by me not buying foods that I can snack on. So you can't eat when you're stressed if you don't have anything to eat. So I don't buy my favorite snacks like goldfish or chips or crackers. So I don't keep those in the house because I know if I get stressed, I get snacky, and I don't want to eat a lot of food when I'm stressed because, again, sometimes it feels like I'm stressed every day, so I don't want to just be binging on food. Kind of alongside that is that I would drink things that are not water, which is not exactly great for your teeth, but I would drink pop or vitamin water or things that are just not water when I'm stressed. But it also helps that I have pretty good control over what I drink. So I don't drink caffeinated beverages during the day, during the week, especially not after like 3 p.m. If I drink it, it has to be like at noon because I don't fall asleep easily if I drink a caffeinated beverage. I know there are some people out there that can sleep just fine if they drink a cup of coffee before they go to bed, but that is not me, and I like to sleep. And I really value sleep, so I just don't do that. So I usually drink them on the weekend because, again, it's all about that balance. You shouldn't be, for me at least, I believe that we should have balance between the healthy things and the unhealthy things. I definitely think if you want a cookie, you shouldn't bar yourself from eating a cookie, but again, everything in moderation, right? So I guess the food for thought of today's episode is to find some healthy ways, if you don't already, to cope with stress. And I think that's a lot of self-reflection as well, because you need to be able to self-reflect and be like, what are the habits that I do when I'm stressed, and are they good or bad? All relative, of course, to the certain person, but are they good or bad? And what can I do to kind of get those bad coping methods out and incorporate better coping methods? I think this is especially important for people going into STEM major, dental school, medical school, because again, every single day you're going to feel like you're stressed. And if you don't have great ways to deal with that stress, you're going to burn out and it's not going to be pretty. Trust me, I've been there, I've been burnt out before. It's not a great feeling and it's mentally exhausting. So it's very good to find ways to cope with stress that are healthy for you and make you a better person mentally and physically. I find myself now trying to find ways to cope with stress as I go towards the end of the semester because, as I was telling some of my classmates, it's not that this half of the semester is necessarily hard. I definitely think the first half of the semester is harder. There was more things due all at the same time, and it's kind of eased up a bit, but the energy level is not the same as it was in the beginning of the semester, so even though it's gotten relatively easy this last half of the semester, the energy level is falling, so everything feels like it takes more effort. So I'm definitely trying to find ways to cope with this stress in, again, healthy ways. Like I said earlier, it's been raining a lot, so I haven't been going on walks as of lately, so that takes that out. But I do have my piano, and I would like to go back to playing it. It's not like anything's barring me. I mean, it's right behind me. But it's mostly I have to like sit down, find the music, and I'm making it sound like it's like this whole big deal to sit down and play piano. It's really not. It's just that I haven't put aside time for it. So definitely I'd like to put aside time to play the piano because I really do like playing the piano. I also have my writing that I can go back to, but I'm currently writing two things at the same time, two very different things at the same time, and as I get more stressed as the semester goes on, I have a hard time. My creative part of my brain kind of like takes a back seat, is on the back burner, so I have a harder time moving both stories along. So that seems to suffer as I go on through the semester, but I try every night to pull up at least one of the two things that I'm working on and try to peck out at least one sentence of dialogue or a sentence. So, in conclusion, I think we would all benefit from healthy ways to cope with our stress and realizing the unhealthy ones and incorporating better ones. This is kind of a short episode today, so I hope you don't mind. But I'm gonna skedaddle because I'm gonna actually do things tonight. I'm recording this on a Saturday night, and I'm going to either watch a movie or do some writing or play piano. So I'm gonna cope with my stress that I've had. I was in lab all this morning and studying this afternoon, so I'm gonna incorporate those things. I'm gonna put the money where my mouth is and actually put those into practice. So thank you for watching or listening or both to this podcast. I really appreciate it. Again, sometimes I feel like I'm talking into the void, but even if there's one person in there with me, I'm okay with that. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer, either about dentistry or not at all about dentistry, I would love to answer them, so you can either DM me them on Instagram or send a carrier pigeon my way. That's all for this episode. I'll see you in the next.